5.11 ecological footprints. What is your impact? What is our collective impact on the resources of the world? So we're going to learn about some variables that are used to calculate this factor. And I like to start off with this diagram you see up here. How many Earths would it take to sustain the different countries that are very resource intensive? You can see United States down here at the bottom. We collectively we need about 5 Earths to provide the resources that we use during a year. Not just the resources we use, but the waste. Remember, it's all about thinking about the waste product, which that's not something we normally think about because it's really pretty cheap to throw stuff away compared with buying things. So we're focused on the buying. We're not focused on the throwing away. What if it costs as much to throw something away as it would be to buy something? I'm pretty sure that we would change our habits. But let's just look at, some of the top countries. UAE is ahead of us, almost by a little over an Earth, or about an Earth. United Arab Emirates. Then we go down the list through all these developed countries with big industrial economies, and we see Ecuador is the one on this list. Is about equal. The people that are living there are basically in balance with what the Earth can provide. So it's good that not everybody lives like people in the United States or the UAE, because we wouldn't have much left. So, but just for some statistics to put up for you, USA equals about 5% of the world population. Right now, the world, we just passed 8 billion, so we're about 8.2 billion people. And USA, about just over 340 million. Just to give you a hard number about that. So we are 5% of the world population, but we use 20% of the energy that the world uses. So think about that. That's pretty significant. 20% of all the energy the world uses, we use here in this country. And we eat about 15% of the world's meat. And we produce 40% of the garbage. Wow. So just let that sink in. That's a pretty huge impact. 40% garbage. We are such consumers here in this country. We buy like crazy, like nobody else. You see it everywhere. It's really hard. Our advertising, the movies, everything, music we see, all encourages a lot of consumerism, a lot of buying. So this is the definition here. These ecological footprints compare resource demands and waste production. Resource demands and waste production required for an individual or a society. You should be able, like when you see pictures like this, you should be able to tell a story about what's going on, what's happening, and the ecological impact. So here we have, looks like drilling. It looks like natural gas. So this is what is powering our economy, is powering the lights that I'm using right now in the computer at our schools. Mostly generate probably 90% by burning natural gas. Corn production, food, it's right here. You would have to know this is corn, but food production, all the inputs, right? Inputs of energy, the land, any chemicals that are added, and the energy that you need to harvest it, process it, send it off to markets. Just the amount of energy, the amount of impact you have there. Mining, when you buy a new phone, you're encouraging more of this. You buy a new product of any type, it requires mining. And by the way, you might not know plastic, which is what so many things are made of these days. That's from oil. So this is mining product. Plastic is oil. The vast majority, some plastic is made out of cellulose fiber. And over here, look at mining for all products. And here we have energy generation, right? This happens to be green energy. Energy that we can, it's renewable. And that's what we want to move towards. Energy that can be sustained over the long term. Over here, this is non-renewable. And this is what's going to have a big impact. It already is having a big impact, relying on this non-renewable energy. So some more different factors. Carbon footprint from energy. Basically, CO2 production, the way it is now. Even to do wind energy like this, it takes CO2 to create, right? You have to build the structures, build the turbines, and maintain them, drive out to them. That takes energy. Land that you need to take over to, for housing, for factories, for roads. Forest resources. For lumber and paper, the vast majority of things are built, with wood structures and so forth. And then we have like farmland and pastures. Where we raise our food, hopefully less meat, more plant-based diet, and then oceans and rivers where our fisheries are. And remember, we used to think rivers are too big and there's so much water coming we can't destroy them. But yes, we know we can. Rivers started catching on fire back in the 60s, and we definitely now know we can, have huge negative impacts on the ocean with all the trash that's permanently floating around the Pacific and other places. And we can pretty much decimate fish. We think, oh, there's so much fish in the ocean. How can we possibly do that? But it's possible. So this is an interesting statistic. You need about 3 million pounds of resources over your lifetime. Just look at all these different things that you would never really think about that we need for the products that we use. Right here is iron ore, anything metal. Remember, ore is the rock you get iron from, about 20,000 pounds. Over here, up here, this is stone and gravel, where we quarry, we mine a lot of this here, not that far from Jordan High School. I put stone twice. Stone, sand, and gravel. And over here, aluminum. Got to put 1.3 million pounds. All these numbers are in pounds. And about 1,500 pounds of aluminum. And not that much gold. 0.09 pounds of gold. Aluminum. Aluminum, that's better. So there's something called Earth Overshoot Day. Basically, it's a calculation of how long it takes us, the Earth, to regenerate the resource that we're using in a year. And back in 1970, the whole Earth combined, we every year we would regenerate the things that we use. The Earth could regenerate it, but as you can see, over time it's decreased. It's interesting. It went really down until the late 70s, and then it kind of went up for a while because at this point in time, politically, pushes were made to be more have more conservation in the United States, and you can see it had a good effect to the early 80s. But another presidential administration came in and said, we don't want to sustain, we just want to use as much as we can. Deregulation, that's what caused this right here in the United States, because we have such a big impact. So deregulation is a terrible thing in terms of keeping the Earth available for us to use. You trash the Earth, you trash your own chances. So right here we had regulation, environmental regulations go into effect in the United States. It just shows you what the impact we have. Oh, and guess what happened here? We had a bit of deregulation. So every time you see a rise in this, you see regulation go into effect, and when it drops, regulation dropped off. But today, as of 2025, by late July, we've used all the resources that we can regenerate in a year. So after July 24th, we're going into debt, basically environmental debt. So the Earth Overshoot Day, the first day the Earth can't regenerate ecological sources used in a year. And hopefully we'll flatten that out, because if we don't, we're just going to be putting the Earth into bigger and bigger debt. And here is an example of that. This is Lake Mead over in Arizona. And this is the 22-year mega drought from 2020 to 2025. You can see in the date, or 2022, the size of this reservoir decreasing. So the West gets a lot of its water from the Colorado River. That's what this is. It creates Lake Mead. And you can see it's just drying up. We're losing that resource, or we're using it up. This is exactly what we mean by the Earth Overshoot Day. We are overshooting what we can use. We're using more water than we can replace. So here's a good example, a suggested skill, data analysis. Looking at this data, this is California. California agriculture. What we basically use water for. So you can see trees and vines. So this would be like almond trees and grapes, to be specific. Almonds. Write that again. And we can see the most water we apply in an area, and the amount of water. But you see the revenue is the highest for these. So this might be a good idea. It's a trade-off we're making, right, for the economy and the amount of water that we're using. So maybe because, high profits, because the profits are high, maybe it's worth large inputs of water. That's something you could something you could argue. Now down here, we look at field and grain. We might see, oh, lots of water. We're not really getting a profit from it. So rice, wheat, things like that. Alfalfa. Oh, alfalfa. Yeah, look at that. So these maybe not worth the trade-off. All these issues, you have to think about, economics as well as the environment. And there's a big, the main issue, or one of the issues these days, people think you have to have one or the other, but that is not true. You can have both. You just have to make some decisions based on the resources and the economic payoffs and the impact it's having on the environment. So what can you do? What part of your footprint do you think is the highest? Now, for most of us, this is the most, these are the most accessible ways to reduce. And it's mostly based on the food we eat, as you'll notice. Now, industry, businesses have huge responsibility for this. I don't in any way want to think it's up to us individual citizens. Corporations need to take responsibility for their impact on the environment. Right now, they're not forced to nearly as much. But the number one thing, reducing your food waste, composting your food waste, which we're doing now in Long Beach, or now actually in California. It's a law where we have to compost, so that's great. So if you have leftovers, eat them. I love leftovers. I have family members that will not eat leftovers. Eating local, so that means there's less transportation cost, which really comes down to so less fuel burn. Seasonal fruits and vegetables. Don't get vegetables and fruits from South America. Those have to go on a boat, travel all the way up here. Perhaps growing your own veggies, that's very difficult for most people. Very hard, I'll say very hard. I've tried to grow tomatoes and lettuce and all that, and it doesn't. I would starve if I had to do that. But definitely, we talked about before, eating less meat and dairy. Keeping and slaughtering animals has a huge impact on the environment. Less dairy. You don't have to stop, just eat less. Fishing is tough to do. Some fishing, salmon versus wild caught. I'm gonna write that down here. You'll see that can be really tricky to figure out what's best. Because you might think, oh, if you farm it, that might be better than going out in nature. But the farming process, we know, can create a lot of waste, have a lot of impacts. Going out and catching too much wild fish can have impacts as well. So it all comes down to regulation, watching what we do, reducing kitchen waste, and always, eating less processed food. The more processing food has, the more energy. So the more ingredients, the more energy it takes to do that. So write down more processing equals more energy. So I'll challenge you. Try to think about ways for you to reduce your ecological footprint, and I will do the same.